And there's research that shows that if you have a positive perception of aging, you will live 7.5 years longer than people who have a negative perception of aging.
Wow. Hi, everybody. This is Diane Gilman, formerly known as the Queen of Genes on HSN, but now the proud host of my podcast and also the title of my second book, Too Young to Be Old, because it's all in your head. Today, we have the perfect guest, Jennifer DiVita. She has and is certified in aging specialist, a gerontologist, and we are going to discuss the pillars of successful, happy aging. Jennifer, you don't look old enough to be discussing aging. Tell me
Hi,
something.
Diane. Nice to be on again.
Oh, it's great. It's great to have you. As a young woman, what made you want to become an expert in old girls like me?
Well, I don't ever call you old girls. Never. That's the first thing to successful aging is how we even frame how we identify ourselves. But truly it was accidental because I got my degree in broadcasting and I had taken some time off to be a stay-at-home mom, tried to get my foot back in the door. And at the age of 31, when I applied to be on TV as a reporter, I was told I was too seasoned to be on TV. I was 31 years old. So I just naturally shifted and went into the field of gerontology, which is the study of being too seasoned. And so I fit right in with the population. But what's so interesting, Diane, is I was deemed too old for TV. And when I went into gerontology, guess what I heard? I was too young to understand older adults. And so that ageism really occurs at both ends of the spectrum.
It does. It does. And you know something? Honestly, I have a PR team, and very often they'll try and get me on a podcast and they'll say they're not even interested in my subject matter. It just comes down to numerics. Oh, no, she's too old. They don't even give you a chance. They just put you in a bucket of uselessness because you've lived a few extra years, which actually is ridiculous. You're just getting incredible prejudice without any individuality. So
yeah. And
I'm just going to be asking you
emphasis on that chronological number. And the real question shouldn't be like, how old are you, but how vital are you? That's the important question because the age is irrelevant.
They don't even give you that grace. You don't even get that chance. So in other words, to me, ageism in America, especially for women over 50, 55, is so strong. It's so murky that's it. They hear a number, you're cut. They hear a number, you don't get a chance. I had 30 years on air on QVC and HSN. I didn't even start until I was 48 and a half, almost 49. When I had my premiere show. But the beauty of tele-retail was the customer was older. They weren't shopping so much in stores anymore. They were staying home and they liked shopping from their sofa, but having all that drama and the story and the host and the guest. And otherwise, if I was going into classical TV, I would have never gotten on at the age of 49, let's say. So tell me what you think the pillars of successful, happy aging are. What are the most important points?
One of them is to literally ignore some of that feedback, right? Because if I had bought into that idea that I was too old to be on TV, I wouldn't have risen in my career. And the irony is that I am now 50 and I'm doing more TV than ever. So
Isn't that funny?
I know.
Wow.
So I do TV shows and I do commercials, and my platform is being seasoned, which is, the irony of all of it is that I'm an aging influencer and I use the media and TV shows and commercials to advance the message of positive
Yeah.
aging.
Yeah. Me too.
So I think the first one is to really just ignore the messaging. And so when we talk about ageism, there are 3 different types of ageism. There's that internal ageism where it's like we say to ourselves, oh, I'm too old for that, or I'm past my prime. We're not a piece of meat. Secondly, is that interpersonal ageism where we might give somebody that greeting card that's very negative. It's the Maxine greeting card. It cracks jokes about the fact that a person is old when they're 40 and over the hill. And then there's the institutional ageism, which is the stuff that we experience in politics right now, right? Like, how old is too old to be a presidential candidate?
Yeah.
Being told you're too seasoned for a job. It's in healthcare where you might be ignored because the person that you're with, who's the caregiver, might be the one who the doctor talks to, and you're the patient, and yet you're being dismissed or ignored.
Totally. And, I'm pretty self-disciplined. So 2 things. I forgive myself for aging because you can get really frustrated. You can't do the kind of sports you could once do. Well, it's not even realistic to think running 7 or 8 miles a day at 30 is what you're going to do at 80. So you have to sort of adjust yourself. But society never really addresses those adjustments. And the other thing is I never, and I mean never, internally or externally, tell myself or say, you're too old. If I really want to do something, I will figure out an adjusted way to do it, an amended way to do it. But you won't
and it's part of healthy aging because there's research. There's a book called Ageism Unmasked, and there's research that shows that if you have a positive perception of aging, you will live 7.5 years longer than people who have a negative perception of aging.
Wow. I didn't know that, but that makes sense. And the other thing that I truly believe in, and I did this when I was going through chemo, I made sure I laughed every day. I made sure I told jokes. I made sure I made people around me happy. I wanted good vibes going out and coming in. And you're saying that laughter is actually a lifesaver.
It is huge. And again, research shows that kids laugh up to about 300 times a day on average. And as we get older, our funny bone becomes osteoporotic because adults, we only laugh about 17.5 times a day. Now, thank goodness we have that extra half in there because 17.5 times a day is kind of pathetic. And so it's so important to make sure that you laugh every day because laughter increases the dopamines in your mind. It improves your happiness. It improves your overall well-being. And we just forget to laugh because life gets so serious. And so every day we have to find things to laugh about, even if it's just going on YouTube and watching videos. But we have to make sure.
What? I do it all the time. My favorite thing, like they're banning TikTok, which is killing me. And what do I watch on TikTok? I said, okay, if China really wants to spy on me, then they're going to know I love baby kittens. And I watch newborn kitten videos. And why do I do it? Because it's soft, it's life affirming, it puts a smile on my face. And I make sure, because I am convinced that I went through chemotherapy easily and I got really good treatment because I made everybody around me, including myself, smile.
Yeah,
I never came in as a downer. I never complained. Everything was, it's a great day. Look at how pretty it is outside, whatever. So
you found the silver lining after becoming silver.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I became a podcaster because it is honestly something you can do and spread really good knowledge. And there's nobody standing over my shoulder saying, you're too old, you're not photogenic enough. But yeah, it's free range out here. It's a little wild, wild west, but that's okay for me. Now, the other reason I wanted to do podcasting was to meet fascinating people with all sorts of knowledge, like you, Jennifer. And you're telling me that isolation is actually a killer and the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day?
Yes, true. That's what the research shows. So isolation is actually detrimental to your health. And what happens is when we get older, our social circles shrink. We retire. We don't have those networking lunches, the water cooler conversations, and our social circles just become smaller, and people pass away around us too as we get older. And so it's so important to make sure that you stay connected to people, because the research shows that if you stay socially disconnected from people, you will decline into depression, anxiety, even suicidal thoughts, and mental illness. And so it's like cigarettes kill your lungs, isolation kills your soul. And so you need to make sure that you stay connected to people, whether it's a phone call, a Zoom call, going to a store and just talking to the cashier, whatever it is, but having some type of human interaction. And as we get older, it gets more and more difficult to do that. So it's critical to make sure that you stay connected to people.
And I think the other thing too, and I'm just going to say this for me individually, I've been in women's organizations and I found that they were I thought they were appropriate for me, but I found they were almost an age ghetto where everybody is a age and everybody complains about their physical shortcomings and ailments and the people around them that are not going to make it much longer. So I found once again, in the profession I'm in now, which is podcasting, and I really love it, that I get a huge variety of people to talk to. And I think the other thing, and I'm betting that you're going to agree with me, that is elementally a part of staying young as you grow old is using your brain and always learning something new every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, every day. I mean, if we're breathing, we have the capacity to learn and to grow. And it is so important to keep using your brain. And so it's like mental aerobics, right? Like we have to keep our body physically active. We also have to keep our brain physically active.
So we talk on this podcast, Too Young to Be Old, a bit about super agers. And those are people who seem to age smarter, to be able to live longer. You call them, and I love it, it's actually easier to say, super seniors. Give me your definition of super seniors and what you believe are the advantages of getting yourself, because you have the power to get yourself into that group. And one thing I do want to say about being older is I think I was taught when I was younger that old age was passive. In other words, it rolled over you like a tsunami and you're just like, oh no. But in fact, not true at all. You've got a million choices to make. And if you truly realize that this is a proactive time of life, and you alone can make decisions that make it so much more pleasurable, so much more productive, then I think you're really on the road to being a super senior. But I want to hear your definition of that because I love the terminology.
So how I define it are older adults who are doing things that defy the odds of what they're supposed to do at their age. We don't necessarily know like what, when somebody is a certain age, what they're supposed to do, but we kind of know when somebody's an outlier, when they're doing extraordinary things that set them apart from like maybe the mass of people, in their generation or at their stage of life. And they're really doing extraordinary things, whether it's physical or it's artistic or it's educational. And it's just these people that you look at them and you go, wow, right? Like that's very inspirational, very extraordinary.
Do you have any examples of that we could hear about? And so we could then go and take a look. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great.
Yeah. So even if you think of like Hollywood, right? Like Clint Eastwood, he's 93 years old, still acting, producing a movie right now, right? So like, a Hollywood icon like Clint Eastwood. But then there are people that are more like everyday people. So here are a couple. So there's a gentleman by the name of Yuichiro Miura, and he's the oldest person to reach the top of Mount Everest, and he did it at the age of 80.
Oh, my God.
Then Rosemary Smith, she's the oldest person to drive a Formula One race car, and she did it when she was 79. Harriet Thompson is a cancer survivor. She ran her first marathon at the age of 76, and at 91 completed her 15th marathon, becoming the second oldest marathon runner in history. So these are just a few examples of just, ordinary people. You don't have to be a Hollywood icon like Clint Eastwood.
I will say, Jennifer, that I think the real definition is ordinary people with an extraordinary point of view about life. And I remember when I was really young, but I had much older parents, and it was an only child, so I had a lot of time to think. I thought to myself, I don't want to age like this. I didn't see them doing anything productive. I didn't see them happy, especially my mother as a female aging. And I thought, and I made it my goal, and I was young when I was thinking this, I'm going to make every minute extraordinary. Well, yeah, that's a little impractical, but I set out to have an amazing life. And because I didn't like what I saw with my parents aging, my father was 50, my mother was 45 when they had me, and that was in 1945, so it was almost unheard of. I had a friend in school whose mother was 16 when she had her, so I was like, wow, my parents are really old, and they did no exercise, and they smoked cigarettes, and on and on. So as I got older, I thought to myself, okay, guess what? This is not a dress rehearsal. This is a real deal. But this is also an extremely different period of life than youth or middle age. And I think the problem is society doesn't want you to grow old. They don't accept you growing old. And they don't want you when you grow old. So they want to just sort of push you aside. And you don't have any sociological mirror to look at and say, this is how I shift, or, oh, look at all those people. They're doing it right. I can learn from them. But I do remember a year and a half ago being in a profession. I'd been in fashion 50 years, television 30 years. And I just thought to myself, you are not living your life to your fullest. You are not thrilled with every day anymore. And yes, this is safe, but is this really what you want to do for the rest of your life? And I think pretty bravely or foolishly, however you want to look at it, I said, no, this is not what I want to do forever. I want to challenge myself. I want to do something new. I want to do something that makes my heart beat faster. And I did it. I walked away. And if I had to give one piece of advice, I would say sometimes staying in the safest position you can stay in may be the most dangerous thing you can do. How do you feel about that?
Diane, I think that's like so well put, so lovely, so extraordinary. And I would say you are a super senior because you have this mindset of like continuous optimal growth. And I love that you say, staying in the same place is probably the most dangerous thing that you can do because you're not allowing yourself to grow. You're not pushing yourself, seeing what you're capable of. And I think that's so fabulous to hear. And I would classify you as one of these super seniors.
I don't even think of myself as a senior, but I do think I'm in my own right. I'm a super ager. And I think that I realized, first of all, I think having a life-threatening disease that was diagnosed at 72 for me, I'm 78 now, was a real eye-opener. Because I think you can fool yourself into feeling like, I'm immortal and hey, I'm older now, I'm more sedentary, so I deserve to eat what I want to eat, and I deserve to drink what I want to drink. And that is so the wrong attitude to take. You've got to treat yourself like you are some specialized mechanism that needs fine tuning all the time. It's really interesting. The hospital I went to had dietary goals. They had things that, of course, you would say, well, yeah, like don't smoke cigarettes, but don't drink any hard alcohol. Don't even drink. If you drink more than one glass of wine a day, you've got a problem. Don't eat red meat. Don't do this. Don't do that. Eat a lot of greens. Da, da, da. And I had to say to myself, you know what? I'm going to make it sort of like a game. I'm going to make it something that's amusing, like I'm the worst cook in the world. Absolutely, hands down, worst cook in the world. But I wanted to learn how to make some vegetarian dishes, like, let's say, vegetable lo mein. Where, number one, I felt in control of my diet. Number two, I was teaching myself something, taking online cooking classes. And number three, doing something good for my body. And I realized after doing that for just a little while that being vegetarian, in fact, was something my body truly appreciated. So now I'm trying to expand that. And this is where aging can become entertaining and fun because you can take on, and that's the beauty of just understanding a little bit about technology, because I'm also so non-technical, but take those online cooking classes, take those online makeup classes, learn how to deal with yourself in the moment. I think the one thing that drives me crazy is people will see me after my comeback from cancer and say, oh, you're almost back to the old you. No, it's the new me. I'm never going to go back to the old me. That was 6-7 years ago. That's not going to happen. And I want to talk to you about one more thing that I think is so important with aging. I'm very motivated, and I'm one of those people that always wants to be the very, very best I can be at whatever I do. And I realize some things I do, I wasn't born to do. And so I'm going to be good at it, but I'm not going to be the best. Somebody else is. But time is different for us as we get older. So if you're talking to somebody who's 30 and I'm almost 80, they'll say, oh, well, you're going to build up your podcast. It could take a few years, but that's normal. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You're 30. You maybe have lived 1/3 of your life or not. You've still got 60 years. That luxury of time way ahead of you. I'm almost 80. If I'm really lucky, I'm going to get another 20 years. My friend just lived to almost 103. I was half L. So let's say I could get lucky and have 23 years. Time is different for
Yeah.
me. I will work harder to make it happen sooner. What do you think about that theory of time? Time is so elastic, but
Yeah, it's so true because the older we get, the faster time goes too, right? Like you just go, how did that decade pass by so quickly? And it just continues to accelerate as we get older. And we have far less time ahead of us than behind us as we get older. And so we feel like time is of the essence to get more and more stuff done.
I
And
think so.
in my novel, Not Your Shoe Size, I talk through the decades of life that the women go through and how, as children, they feel like, oh my gosh, they've got, a millennial to live. And then as they get to become middle agers, they go, oh my gosh, right? Like time is of the essence. And I think sometimes that's maybe where like the midlife crisis happens. I'm not necessarily sure if that's a real thing or not. It's kind of more of like transition, we're trying to figure out what do we want to do with our lives. And then as we get older, we just need to move faster to get it all done. And so my novel, Not Your Shoe Size, captures that struggle with time decade by decade in each chapter.
I think midlife crisis is real. And I think, however, it's the admission that things are slipping away. It's, I used to live next door to a donut shop, and they would start frying their donuts at 2 a.m. And I remember always getting up, slipping on a pair of jeans and some loafers, running across the alleyway, buying 6 donuts, and eating them all at 2 a.m. in the morning. And yeah, you gained a little weight, but not much. I think you go into middle age and suddenly you start to see that whole thing of just life is automatic. You're always going to wake up and look good, even after you just got a couple of hours sleep and you were out all night at a club.
Yeah.
You aren't going to worry. You're suddenly gaining weight and you don't understand why. You're losing hair.
And midlife, what happens too, the research shows that we actually are the least happy in our lives during midlife, that the old bell curve of aging where, the peak of life was at middle age, which is actually not true. It's an inverted curve called the U curve of happiness, and we're at our lowest levels of happiness in our 40s and 50s. And we start ascending that U curve when we're in our 60s, and we surpass our happiness levels from when we were kids. So that's where like this idea of the midlife crisis comes in, is that we're just at a very low point in the life plan, in the life walk that we're in.
I think the midlife crisis is, if you had to just distill it into one thought, it's a thought that you are not immortal. There is something about going into your 40s and definitely your 50s, and you realize, this isn't going to go on forever, because literally for me, physically, from 20 to 45, I was the same person. That was just sort of the same person. Then everything starts acting differently or not cooperating with you. And you realize, and what society teaches you is you are now in a state of decline. And no one is happy about that. And on the surface, there's things you can do about it, like men can get hair transplants, men can take Viagra, but those are all surface issues. They're not really going into rejuvenating your whole body. Believe me, this is so crazy to say, but they have proven the happiest decade of your life are your 70s. And I would have to say, even with breast cancer in the middle of it, which honestly didn't make me unhappy, actually I found there were parts of it that were sort of fascinating, like, I never not worked a day in my life. So I sort of took it as enforced time off. And there are parts of it that I actually liked. But yeah, I can attest to the fact that my 70s have without a doubt been some of the very happiest years of my life. This is one of the best decades of my life, not only for happiness, but for reinvention and for personal growth. So, in terms of summing it up, Jennifer, do you want to give me what you think the 3 pillars of successful aging are?
Yes, I would say the first one is to have that positive mindset about getting older, that it is a time period of growth and opportunity. And like you said, becoming happy and feeling good about the skin that you're in and the well-worn shoes and understanding that life does get happier as you get older. Secondly is to push back against society's views of aging and don't buy into the ageism stuff or the limitations, even the self-limitations of what we say to ourselves. So push back against society because there's this internal struggle of, do we embrace our age? Do we defy our age? Because of the messaging that the media gives us, that somehow we're not okay with gray hair and wrinkles.
Yeah, the messaging the media gives you is that age is going to crush you.
Yes.
When in fact that implies that you are powerless. My attitude is, before we finish this with the third pillar, is that, and especially if you're coming out of a life-threatening illness like cancer, you are here for a purpose. You are not randomly here living out your 70s, your 80s, your 90s. Age with intention and age with purpose.
Yes. Yep. And the third thing is to push yourself to try those new things, right? Like, people want to write their book, write your book. People are debating, do I pursue that $1 million idea that I have? Do I reinvent my career? Do I leave everything behind and become a podcaster, right? So push yourself to try new things, because the reality is like we have one life to live. So make it extraordinary. Push yourself to try new things and to, even allow yourself to fail. Maybe it's not the right thing, but it's going to lead to the right thing. So I would say that healthy aging it's all about the mindset, of course, the physical piece too, but we hear far more about the physical exertion of being important, not so much the mental and the mindset, which is
and the spiritual. So, I would say, if I had to sum up my viewpoint of aging as I'm there in my upper 70s, these don't buy into society telling you these are throwaway years, that these are years where you are useless, when in fact, I've got a lot of knowledge, I've got a lot of energy left, I've got a tremendous amount of curiosity, and I want to make a difference for my female community. And damn it, I am on the road to doing it. So, Jennifer,
Diane, you are extraordinary, truly. And so I love that what you're preaching, you're practicing, and that it's not just lip service. Like, you're living your best life and you're living an extraordinary time in your history.
Yeah. I really want my legacy to be that I help women to age more gracefully, more joyously, and more purposely. And so I thank you so much. And thank you for sending me your book. As soon as I finish the part of my third book that I have to finish, I'll be reading your book. And so hang in there and know that you can always remain too young to be old. It's all in your head. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.